Hey guys, it's Gaia, what's up? And welcome back to my channel. So since it's that time of year again where letting season opens back up and students are suddenly forced into the stressful task of finding a house for next year, today I'm going to do a cute little Q&A where I'm going to answer all of your burning questions about finding the right student house. So we're going to be talking flatmates, student rent, guarantors, deposits, the lot. So since it's a Q&A, I asked all of you lovely people on Instagram to send in any burning questions you have surrounding student living and student houses and all that stuff. So thank you to all the people who did send in things. If you don't already follow my Instagram, I'll leave a picture of it here. Go follow it for the latest YouTube updates. So yeah, without further ado, let's get on with this Q&A. So the first question is, what prices could I be looking at for a house? So typically for like proper student houses, prices range between like £80 a week to probably like £150 a week. I mean, you do get some slightly more expensive, but those are more for like studio kind of student flats, which are normally in like the £200 a week range. Again, it depends on the area you live in. Like I am basing my prices off Nottingham, which is where I'm based for my university degree, but I think if you live further down south, like in London, obviously the prices are going to be a bit more expensive. But either way, between like 80 quid to £200, maybe slightly more, is the rough estimate of prices per week for student houses. In terms of finding the right price for you, I think it depends on several factors. The main one being really your financial situation and whether you can afford it. Obviously a lot of people use their student loan to pay off their accommodation, but not every student gets like the highest amount of student loans, so it does kind of limit your budget when you are looking for student houses. I would say at the end of the day, pick one that like isn't too expensive but isn't like so cheap that it's like sort of dodgy. Like even though between 80 and 100 quid a week sounds like amazing, and you do get a lot of student houses that are that price, a lot of the time you will find they're like not dodgy, but they're just not sometimes as well like maintained or like looked after, or the landlord can be a bit questionable. But then again, you can also have that with like more expensive, you know, student houses as well. Like last year I pretty much paid like 150 a week for my student house, which is quite insane considering a lot of my friends were paying like 50 quid less a week for theirs, and my landlord didn't always like come and like fix the stuff. Like even though we kind of had like a student company as our landlord, we didn't have like an external landlord, but like even though considering we were, you know, spending 150 quid a week, they take a while to say come and fix the problem, and even then they didn't always fix it. Like we had, I don't know if you guys remember, like if you've been with me for a while you might remember, but a year ago when I was living in my second year university house, we had this like horrible leaking ceiling, which like there was actually, it was in the kitchen from memory, and it was actually these like massive cracks on the ceiling because our bathroom was directly above the kitchen. Obviously, you know, there was leaking in the pipes and it was just warping the whole ceiling, and our like student letting company never really like fixed it. Like even when I left, it was still like, it just looked like it was going to cave in. So I think in some respects, I think even if you don't have like a crazily big budget, don't focus on like the price so much. At the end of the day, you want to live in a nice house, one that doesn't look like it's going to have many maintenance issues or you're going to have any issues with the landlord. Like I know that's kind of hard to tell at the time, but just don't live somewhere just because it's cheap when you know deep down that it's probably just going to fall apart like throughout the year, because you're going to be the one suffering. However though, at the end of the day, it does depend on your financial situation. Some students do find that they are forced into renting cheaper houses, and that is completely okay. Try and maybe find a house like in the middle. Like a lot of students do spend like 120 a week or like 100 a week on houses, or like 115. Like it's normally like that range. Well, I know that's definitely the case for Nottingham. Like I said, I don't know whether that's the case for like other student cities, but for Nottingham, a lot of student houses, or a lot of students I know, normally spend that much per week on their student house. The next question is a house better than halls? Well, I definitely feel in my case, I have definitely preferred living in a house than I have halls, and that is for like a range of different reasons. One being the noise. Like I feel like when you live in a student house, because you're pretty much sharing the road of like sometimes like non-students, it's not as noisy. However, you will still find like if you do live in like a student populated area, such as the one that I live in, you will still get obviously a lot of noise from like other student houses, you know, down the road, but I don't think it is anywhere near as bad as halls, because you're all crammed like really close together in halls, and There's a lot more students and they're all first years and no one really cares about respecting others. In a house you have a lot more room. I feel like I definitely prefer like student houses for that reason. I like also having the feel of a house, like, you know, when you go to uni and have a whole day of lectures and then you get to come home almost, instead of like going to a flat. Even though there are like slight downsides to living in a house compared to halls, such as the distance, I have to obviously walk slightly further now because I'm not living like directly on campus. There are still personally a lot more benefits to living in a house than halls. So if you're one of those people that is like contemplating living in halls again for second or third year, I'd like discuss it with your friends and see how you feel, because especially if you've had like a bad experience in halls, you might actually find like a house is just so much better. Like I feel like I definitely get a lot better like sleep and I don't have that like constant fear that my like stuff's gonna get broken. Next question is favourite accommodation so far and reasons why. I feel like out of all the 3 accommodations I've lived in, so for the first year I lived in Guildford South, because if you guys are new to my channel, I go to Nottingham Trent University and I am based on City Campus, so I lived on Guildford South. In second year I also, like I said previously, I lived in a house with 3 girls I previously didn't know before moving in, and then this year I'm living with 5 other people from my course, and obviously like I said we're living in a student house. And I feel like out of all the years, even though I've had good moments throughout all of them, I feel like this year is definitely the best. Like I've only lived in this house for like nearly 2 months now and I'm already like having so much of a better time. Like my flatmates are nicer, they're cleaner, there's less noise, I've got a bit more room, I have a double bed, all those little things, you know, it's cheaper as well, the landlord's nice. So yeah, out of all of my accommodations, I definitely would say I prefer this accommodation. Next question is guarantors, do you need one? This is one thing that I think a lot of students forget about when they think about like renting a house. Basically, if you don't know what a guarantor is, they are people that you kind of like elect to like be on your paperwork. So say if like for some reason you can't pay your rent, somehow there is some reason that you can't pay your rent, you basically like assign a certain person. Normally they're like a relative or like a family member or just like a close person. You basically make them your guarantor, which means that they pay the rent instead. It's almost like a safety net for landlords when dealing with students and stuff. So just in case if there is a situation where the student can't pay, they still do get their money. Over the last few years I've put my mom as my guarantor, and I'm pretty sure most people do. Like I said, it's normally is a family member. Most of the time you will find though that like nothing really happens after obviously you put their name down. Like just because you're selecting them as your guarantor, it doesn't mean that they do end up paying your rent. For most students, when they go through student houses, they don't have any issues of paying the rent, so it never does have to like land on the guarantor's lap, you know, as like responsibility. Like my mom's never had to pay any of my rent or anything. So when you are thinking about renting a student house, you do need to kind of brainstorm and think about who you would like to ask to be your guarantor. Like obviously they have to consent, and the student letting company or the landlord does have to send paperwork to them just to make sure that they are also financially able to pay the money, just in case you can't. But yeah, like obviously with guarantors though, you don't need to think about them like straight away when you are looking at student houses. It's only when you start like the paperwork. Next question is, do you have enough room for clothing? I definitely think in some respects you actually have like either the same amount or slightly more than you do in like student halls. It depends though on the house. I definitely have a lot more space this year because I got like a proper wardrobe. You guys will have seen it if you've seen my move-in vlog and my university room tour. If you guys have been around with me for a while, you'll know that I also did a room tour for my second year house. Not gonna lie, I really hated that wardrobe, like, or that like kind of clothing space, because it wasn't even like, I didn't even class it as a wardrobe because it didn't even have doors. Like it was just a few shelves sort of like built into the wall like an alcove, and I hated it. I also hated the fact that like I had to stand on my bed to get to it because it was so high up. Normally with student houses you should have more than enough like room for clothing, and if you don't, then chances are you probably have brought too much clothes to uni. Next question is advice on how to live with others. That is quite a big area really to talk about, so I guess I'm just going to kind of summarize it. But I think the bottom line is, when you kind of live with other people, you need to respect that other people have like different upbringings and experiences and like opinions to you. So that means they have different boundaries and feelings about things. At the end of the day, I think you just need to respect people. That is like the most important thing. Like, if you want to get along with people in a student house, you need to respect people and respect their belongings and respect their feelings. Like, as I found in first year and also in second year, I had a lot of flatmates that would just kind of use my stuff without like asking. And even though I am quite a laid back person, even though I am one of those people that kind of does have that view that, you know, if you are desperate to use something or you need something, I will help you. You know, I don't mind lending my stuff. I still would like you to ask if you can use it, if you know what I mean, like that kind of common courtesy, you know, that decency to like just check that it's okay, you know, on the off chance that it isn't. And a lot of people don't do that. Like, the flatmates that I lived with last year and in first year defo didn't do that. Like, the amount of times I'd find like my forks being used or like pots and pans, like it was more communal stuff, like things that, you know, found in the kitchen that people would use without asking. And I think if you want to get along with people, you need to respect their stuff. Even if it is in the same area as you, doesn't mean you can touch it, you know. So I think bottom line is, if you aren't sure about like what you can touch or like what you can use of each other's and like people like how other people feel about their stuff, I think you just need to sit down and ask them. Also, another bit of advice, I guess, when living with people is to expect that people aren't going to respect your boundaries. A lot of students are quite disrespectful and it is a real shame. And just like be nice. Like, I think that's another thing. Just be nice to everyone, you know, especially at the moment, since it is such like a hard time with it being COVID and like lockdown and all that stuff. Like, just be nice to your flatmates, because you don't know what they're going through in their personal lives. Next question is privacy. How much do you get? I think you get like the same amount as you would with like student halls and as you would really with like, you know, living in your own house. I think in some respects, when it comes to things like bathrooms, obviously in a house you are chances are going to have to share a bathroom with other people. You will sometimes find a student house that does have en-suites, but they are quite rare. For me, I had an ensuite bathroom in first year and I had to adjust kind of sharing the bathroom space with other people, and like not just like sharing the space but also like understanding kind of how they work when it comes to like cleanliness and like mutually agreeing how often to like bleach the toilet. But yeah, overall I think you do pretty much get the same privacy as you would of halls. I think in some respects you even might get a little bit more privacy because you have a house, you know, you haven't got like loads of other neighbouring students in like other flats like in the same block as you. So the next question is, when did you start looking for year 2 housing? So I started looking around October time, because that's when the student letting season starts kind of like officially, and it kind of finishes around like March, May sort of thing. That's when it kind of like dries up because most students have found their houses by that point. I started looking in October, but I didn't actually find a place until March because I ended up moving around a lot of like friendship groups, and like there were a few times where like I was going to live with like a group of 7, and then for some reason that kind of like fell through, and then I'd end up like planning to live with other people, and then that didn't work out because people were trying to drop out of uni or they decided they were going to live at home. Around like February time I did confirm to live with 5 other people, including my ex-boyfriend at the time, but then that fell through as well because we'd just broken up and I did not want to live with him anymore, and loads of other issues. And I finally found my year 2 housing in around like late March, April, but a lot of students do find the houses between like October and like February really. You know, I was just that exception. I just had to move around a lot of like friendship groups and last minute live with some random girls that I didn't know. Next question is how to deal with unwelcome guests, i.e. friends of friends who are being noisy. So I definitely had a lot of this in first and second year. I haven't really had it in third year because my flatmate's really nice, and because of lockdown obviously we can't really like have many people around at the moment. At the end of the day, I think you need to just talk to your flatmates and tell them that you're not happy with this, and to just ask them to be quiet. If they aren't going to be quiet, which is sometimes the case, I definitely had that, I think just talk to someone like the uni, or like if you are living in halls at the moment, talk to like the security team, or even worse comes to worse, call the police, you know, if it is getting that bad. So the next question is advice on picking the right flatmates to live with. It's quite hard in some respects, weirdly, actually picking the right flatmates, because you might find a lot of people do choose to live with their friends or like their course mates or the flatmates that they lived with in first year, which is completely fine. At the end of the day, you want to live with people that you are going to get on with. However, you might find that there are people that like you are literally so close to you and they're like your best mate, but they're almost like the worst people to live with because they're like messy or they're like noisy, I don't know, or they're just not like the best people to live with, if you know what I mean. I knew someone last year who she lived with her best mate, and through living with her best mate she realised that like even though they literally are like inseparable and they love each other so much as friends, like they'd end up just arguing a lot and they'd like fall out over like messes in the kitchen and all that stuff. So I think at the end of the day you want to live with people who are actually going to be good flatmates. Even though you love these people, they might not always be like the best choice. Next question is, when should we start looking for next year? I am a first year student. Like I said, people normally start looking from like October. It can be quite stressful though, especially when you're in first year, because you literally like join university and then you barely know these people and you're expected to suddenly like find like the perfect flatmates and like find the perfect house, and you don't know your flatmates, let alone your like course mates really at that point. But like I say, once you've kind of decided on who you want to live with and you've kind of all decided as a group like what kind of house you want to look at and what area, I suggest like looking as soon as you can, because the best houses do go quite fast. However, there isn't any rush because like, you know, letting season does like last for like a good 6 months. If you want to have, you know, a lot of choice and you want to be able to have the time to like actually go to viewings, even though I know at the moment is kind of impossible because of COVID, if you want to have that chance to like properly view a house and think about it, I think start looking now. Next question is, where would you recommend? So since a lot of my subscribers are based in Nottingham with me, I'm guessing the person who sent this in is also from Nottingham, and that's there's a lot of areas that you should avoid in Nottingham, but there is also a lot of areas that are good. In second year I lived around the Arboretum area, so I lived right next to the Forest Rec, and that was okay. This year well, I'm not actually going to say where I live because, you know, privacy. If you are one of my Nottingham subscribers, it depends where you are based, whether it's, you know, in City or Clifton or Brackenhurst, or if you go to uni of, whether you're based in Beeston, you know, Lenton, that area. I think when it comes to like safe areas, I recommend like the Arboretum, the city centre, like anywhere near this, you know, NTU city campus is good. I also recommend a little bit of like the Lace Market in Hockley. Some people also choose to like live slightly out of the way of the city centre, so some people choose to live in like Mapley or like Arnold, but I recommend living, you know, if you want to look at Mapley Park or like Mapley Top, those are also nice areas of Nottingham. If you're thinking of living in Clifton, I recommend places like West Bridgeford. West Bridgeford is also good if you want to live in the city. You just obviously have to commute by bus. I do recommend West Bridgeford. I have a few friends who live there and it is a nice area and you do have a lot around you. Places I advise to avoid though are places like Hysden Green, St Anne's, Forest Fields, maybe a little bit of Radford, depends where though. I wouldn't recommend living like really far out, you know, unless you do want to commute. But yeah, most students do tend to live in the Arboretum or Radford or like the city centre. Or West Bridgeford if you are going to NTU. If you do go to uni of, a lot of students choose to live in Lenton and Beeston. However, Lenton can be a little bit dodgy sometimes when it comes to like student parties. It is a very student populated area, but I don't know that much about Lenton. I know a little bit more about like the city centre. So, and the last question today is, what comes with your accommodation? So when it comes with your student house, you pretty much get the same sort of thing as you'd expect in like student halls, you know, bed, wardrobe, desk. Obviously you're going to get the things that you expect to have in a bathroom, like a toilet, a shower. You might get a bath. I had a bath last year. It depends what house you choose. Sometimes you might find you are living in a house where you have like a separate kitchen and like living area, so you might have like sofas, you might even have a TV. But yeah, at the end of the day, when it comes to student houses, you pretty much get what you expect to get in a student house. You might also find when you move in that your landlord might give you like a free mattress protector. Last year I think we had a mattress protector, and then this year I had the same, but when it comes to most student houses you do normally get the same sort of things. It's the kind of stuff you expect to get in a house. So I think I'm going to leave it there really, just so this video doesn't get like too long, and since it was only supposed to be a Q&A, so it's not gonna be like a crazily in-depth video about student houses. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope this was helpful to you. Hopefully if you're struggling or stressing about the idea of renting a student house, this video has now given you a few ideas or some advice to use. If it did, please give this video a massive thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. I love you all, and I'll see you in the next video for more university content. Bye!